I wonder what happened to your job security because of this story, which is apparently one issue led to you deleting all the files on your supervisor's machine. How did you survive that situation?
Oh, not well.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Educative Sessions. My name is Lingo, and I am the community manager here with Educative. Educative makes it easy for authors to provide interactive and adaptive courses for software developers. And Educative Sessions is a multi-episodic campaign to engage people in the developer world about their coding experiences. My guest today is Hunter Davis. Hunter Davis is the Director of Engineering with RealSelf. And today's topic is always check your defaults. Hunter, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lee. I'm glad to be here.
Let's jump in. So always checking your defaults. This is a short but very important message, I presume, to share with anybody on an engineering team. But let's take us all the way back to the fact that this is not just one incident, but a word of wisdom across multiple different examples, right? So our story takes place with you working for a manufacturing company. Is that correct, Hunter?
That's correct. This is about 15 years back. This manufacturing company was mostly known for working on cabinets or other wooden objects that are cut from CNC machinery. They also had a number of military industrial contracts. I think they're quite well known for being the company that cut the first stealth bomber wings, which is really neat.
Wow. So I'm presuming you're very much, you work in the software end of all these things, so your work is, integral to potential national security and other precision-based sensitive issues that I'm actually very uncomfortable even prying too much about. I'll try to do my best. But so let's start with, you actually wanted to talk about bugs and bugs that happen on several different occasions, right? Let's go one at a time, right? So the first time
Sure.
you had a situation where you had to resolve an issue over the phone with,
Mm,
you specifically said an unnamed military personnel.
yes.
Share what
I
you're comfortable sharing there.
Yeah, so this is early on in my career as a software developer. I'm a recent graduate. I'm rather headstrong, and I did not always check my defaults, which would get me into trouble. So we had just put out a release of the software for cutting manufacturing items on CNC machines, and we get a call into our helpline, and it's about our newest release. And this is from an unnamed military personnel. We knew the company that was calling, but they couldn't tell us much more than that or what they were working on. So it was a very difficult debugging session. So I get on the phone with this individual, and they're walking me through it. And they can't tell me what they're cutting, they can't tell me what they're doing, or what part of the software they're using. Only that it crashes without warning, without fail, every time right in the middle of their run, which is extremely expensive. I mean, these are, $500,000, multi-million-dollar machines cutting many $1 billion worth of parts. Quite a concern. And folks are worried they'd have to fly me out, get me all NDA'd up, and we're having quite the difficult debugging session over the phone. Well, so I start, as one does in these situations, to try to determine everything that changed between the most current release and the last release that they got, because this was a new issue that they were facing. And I'm going through all of the source code. This is before GitHub. We used a very old source control system called CVS, which wasn't nearly as nice to use. But I'm going through and I'm seeing that there wasn't a lot in this release. Actually, one of the only user-facing features was a new dialogue, which wasn't a very complex dialogue. It was a yes or no question that would be asked as if you were ready to load another part onto the machine. And I thought to myself, well, there's no way that this one dialogue could be crashing this multi-million-dollar machine, could be causing all of this churn. But I felt that it was worth to ask because I really didn't have anything else to go on. So
Mhm.
I said, can you tell me, what part of the software that you're in and what you're doing? And they said, no. And I say, could you tell me if a dialogue is popping up right before the system crashes? And they said, and they got quiet for a minute and they said, yes. And this got me excited because I think I had something. I said, okay, can you tell me what version of our software and what version of our hardware that we've sold you that's doing this work? And it was our newest version of software, and it was a particularly old piece of hardware. Would have been manufactured around 2000, like 1994, 95. and would have been running probably Windows 3.1 or 3.11 for work groups. So prior to Windows 95. And
Wow.
that actually is, that's the twist, that's the key that clarified this for me, because I recall as I was working on this dialogue, I'm a fairly fresh engineer, and I recalled seeing all these pragmas in the C code, like if def, different versions of the operating system. There's a very specific one for Windows 95, which I did not understand until this bug came up, and it was around the space character. And it turns out that when we moved from DOS to a full Windows environment, Windows 95, they changed the space character from the ASCII space, which is character 255, to the Unicode space. And if you try to display a Unicode space on a system that was built in 1994, it won't know what to do, and our software will fully crash. And that made a lot of sense to me once it was presented to me, but I was writing the code, I had no idea and really hadn't thought it through all the way. So in a sense, I suppose I got very lucky to know that one piece of information that would have caught this one. And that was the issue. We sent them a floppy disk with an updated piece of code for the alerting, and everything was working.
I'm chewing on my words right now because I don't want to offend any people that come from the great software company based out in Redmond, and also a fantastic software that I used to use back in the day in Windows
Sure.
90. But you would think that something as, say, critical as making sure that the space key is working properly needs to port over into any future updates. But I guess that's the nature of bugs, is that they're never what you think. They're always the mistakes that should be preventable, right?
So true, so true.
It's crazy. But we're on only the first issue, right? Let's talk about this next issue where you were I don't want to sound accusatory, but this is your phrasing. You caused the printing of 30,000 extra disc 2 CDs. There was a time before the way that we transfer information now that it was all hard, like lasered into these tiny little, like very fragile heat and weather sensitive instruments, and they were expensive, right? So what happened there, Hunter?
This is another default situation. So this is about 2003, 2004. And I had just taken over as the release team lead. So back before we could release software on the internet and into app stores, you'd have a whole team of engineers who worked on the release of a software package, from the creation of the physical media to the instruction manual and all of the technical writing that went into that from the installer software. Now, we used software from a company, now they're owned by Adobe, but it was Macromedia at the time, called Install Shield, which is a pretty well-known, universally kind of standard piece of software install package.
Yeah.
And a CD is roughly around 650, 700 megabytes of storage space. And we were bumping up against that limit. So for our next release, our software had gone over the size that we felt that would fit on a CD. We were about like 730, 740 megs. And I talked to the development team. There wasn't anything that they could do to reduce the size of that. So we had to move to a 2 CD install, which was a big deal. You had to print another 30,000 CDs. You had to get the jewel cases for them all. You had to set everything up. Now, roughly the same time, because a release cycle for a CD project could be 3-4 months, there was a new version of Install Shield, and I flew up to Chicago to take the training around this new version. Now, there was a throwaway line from the instructor, maybe 2 days into the training, where they said, now, of course, don't forget to check your compression box when you're generating your CD images, or everything will get printed to the CD uncompressed and you'll waste a lot of space. And I thought to myself, well, that's a very obvious default. There's no way that we're not doing that. So, while I was up at this training, all these 30,000 discs get printed. I fly back down. I log into our development environment, and I start the process to generate the software for these CDs. And I see, staring me in the face, an unchecked box for compression. Checking that box did reduce the size of the deliverable below 700 megabytes, and we fit it onto one CD. But unfortunately, we had already printed 30,000 CD2s, which we could not print over, and had to use as anytime we needed a blank CD in that business for the next maybe 10 years. It came from that eCabinets version 3 CD2 disc that we had a lot of.
That's awful.
Yeah,
And I remember how, yeah, like I'm old enough to remember the beauty of compression and also the importance of compression, which is still quite important today. But it was such a game changer for a lot of people when it comes to how they handle and transfer data. And yet, it's something we often at some point took for granted. And so, gosh, like, I mean, I don't want to estimate how many, I mean, CDs at the time, especially like not too crazy, but that's a big chunk of money and a big amount of time just lost. Um,
absolutely.
and now we come to the final story, which
Mm.
I wonder what happened to your job security because of this story, which is apparently one issue led to you deleting all the files on your supervisor's machine. How did you survive that situation?
Oh, not well. Well, let's see. So basically, I was writing some part of the software that would clean up old models. So the software was to generate the 3D models that would then get cut out on these large machines. So as a result, as time went on, you'd have a lot of extra intermediate models which would get generated, and they just needed a bit of piece of the software to clean up the default directory for the models, your temp directory, etc. And so I'd written this software. It ran very well on my machine. I was feeling very confident for it. And so I sent it over to my boss, who I knew had a ton of extra models, thought he'd be a good use case. So I send this on over to my boss, who works, we were all working in the same room. So he wasn't more than 15 feet away. And I went about my day. It might have been a half an hour later, I hear, and I'll never forget, my boss, Hunter, what did you do? Oh my God, did you delete my, oh my, what is going on? And actually what had happened was that this is another default case where um, this is back, this must have been in the days of Windows XP or Windows Millennium.
Oh, we don't.
And
I know for a lot of millennials.
I know, right? It's been a while. Um,
I get palpitations thinking about this
Oh,
millennial.
I know, so many bugs, so much trouble, and this is one of them. So there was a function to find a directory, which I would later, I'd call the function, find the directory, and then delete the files within the directory once the directory is found. Now, here's where things got interesting for me at the time. If you passed it a directory that did not exist or didn't understand the path, it would throw an error, and you should catch that error. And if you do not catch that error, it will default to the default directory that a git directory command will get if in Windows XP or Windows Millennium, which for most dynamic link libraries or software needed to be your system directory, Windows. And so what had happened was that my boss, he had set a custom directory for his parts and objects in the software. And when this function called, it went to go find the standard directory and did not find it and threw an error, which I had not written any software to catch, and the error just disappeared into the ether and returned back the directory for his Windows system directory, which also one of the subdirectories was his My Documents folder, um, and ended up deleting all of his in-progress source code work, and he had to reinstall his entire machine.
And this is long before the custom of like saving things to the cloud, of Dropbox and Drive, and
Long before.
before like I mean, where like you lose your computer, you lose your life. That was basically the standard, maybe before like the mid aughts or something. I'm hesitant. I'm worried as to what happened to you. Like,
I was actually at that job for another year after that. I I ate a lot of humble pie, if you will. Kind of maybe one of the first times in my career I realized I had a lot left to learn. And so I took it as a learning experience, and more credit to my former manager. He didn't fire me on the spot. He, doubled down and invested in me as an engineer and helped me improve and learn.
wow, wow. Well, thanks for that. And what like the gratitude and forgiveness amongst engineers. I hope like a lot of engineers will feel that way as well when sometimes just crazy things happen. So we are running close to the end of time, but I feel like I should give you one last opportunity to really just what would it take, right? For,
Mhm.
of course, accidents happen, humans make mistakes, but what was the thing that made you just realize I'm always going to check my defaults? Like that's always going to be a thing in the future. How did you get in the habit of ensuring that these things don't come up again?
Well, the first time something happens, you think, oh, maybe this is a one-off situation. Maybe the second time something happens, you're starting to see a pattern. And I was fairly young. You see a pattern, you think it's something external into the world. By the time you've had a third pretty serious issue and a good talking to with your boss, you realize that something's going on internal, and you need, change has to start from within. And for me, that was the start of a lifelong journey, I suppose.
Wow. Wow. Well, that's such a courageous thing to say. And, I hope, if we ever have this conversation again, like I want to know a little bit more about that. And I think that would be both helpful and inspiring for others who wonder, like, whether it's fate or whether it's bad luck or if there's something that can improve ourselves and, improving the way that we function, even on whether it's pride or weird habits, I think makes us all better people to work with and more encouraging people to work with.
Oh,
So,
thanks,
Hunter,
Lee.
it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing these really like stressful and insane stories, and being so vulnerable about it all. I would like to give you an opportunity to do what we like to call a shameless plug here on
Mm.
Educated. You can talk about anything you like. Uh, really, the floor is yours, so go for it.
Well, thanks, Lee. Well, I really appreciate the time today. This has been a lot of fun. And if I'm going to shameless plug, of course, I want to shameless plug my current employer, RealSelf. We're hiring across all levels and teams, and this is a phenomenal environment where you can feel safe to grow, and your manager won't fire you for missing a default. Um, it is a kind, helpful environment. I'm really proud to work here. So give us a call.
Wonderful. Hunter, thank you so much for being on the show. And I want to thank everybody else for listening or watching to this too. You can check out more of our content on our YouTube channel or our podcast on Podbean. And of course, if you're interested in Educative itself, check us out at educative.io. So for all of us here at Educative, thank you so much and happy learning. Bye.
Thanks, Lee.
Thank you for watching this episode of Educative Session. If you liked this episode, please like it and share with your community. To stay informed about the latest sessions, subscribe to our channel by clicking the button above. Check out our podcast at educativesessions.podbean.com in the description below. Lastly, if you're tech curious, check us out at educative.io. Happy learning, everyone.